Oh, Stephanie.
Hi, Daniel.
There's Stephanie. Is it just you and me?
So far,
Soon?
it's just you and I. I just came from our cabinet meeting, so that's why I'm running late. Deborah's helping him, Leo, get logged in.
Great. And you are muted, Fran.
Of course I am.
That's uncomfortable for you.
I said that I was getting almost competent at this.
Well, we all come on slowly.
Good morning, Chris.
Morning, guys.
It's nice to see the snow on Rainier.
Yeah, well, there's actually real snow falling on Rainier.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, I was a little concerned here when I signed in. It directed me to a different link and then asked me to install. And I thought, uh-oh, that doesn't
Oh,
sound.
my. I hope that others are not having that difficulty.
Zoom sometimes wants you to download it onto your laptop, but if you do join browser, you can join without downloading it.
Or maybe it's an update on the Zoom, Stephanie?
Yes, I received an update notice too, and I'm like, I don't have time for that. Join browser.
I did the update and install, and it only took a few seconds. So,
Oh, okay, good for you.
Well, that's good news.
Daniel, a quick question on this candidate. You said there was an attached interview of some sort. Is that the one where you and Fran were just taking his questions?
Yes.
Because you don't really have yet an interview with him, it looks like, and he has no letter of interest or anything.
Well, I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't send that to you. He will be log on in just a second, so I have to be a little careful about what I say.
Right.
I must not have copied you appropriately. I will do so afterwards. And every time I see you sitting in front of Mount Rainier, I think of our dear friend Willie and his tragic death on the avalanche there.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rupin, oh, he's just coming on. But Willie was such an inspiration. And Rupin, did your father probably at some point had contact with Willie Unsold, the American mountaineer, when your father was running the institute there in Darjeeling?
Well, he was running the Indian Mountaineering Foundation in Delhi, Daniel, and he was involved with the HMI. He was on the board of the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute in Darjeeling. But no, Willie Unsold actually, which year did he go? In the 80s? No, 70s. No, 80s. His daughter Nanda Devi died in 1976, or was it
Right.
1973? She died in 73 when Ad Carter was on the expedition to Nanda Devi.
Yep.
And the funny thing was, Ad Carter was on that Nanda Devi expedition in 1934 in 1934 he was on that expedition, I think.
Right.
And then he was on this Nanda Devi expedition, and really, I think died about 10 years after Nanda Devi died.
Yeah, what was that thing? And then
But yeah, he did know and had met Willie, but not in Darjeeling, perhaps in Delhi or somewhere.
perhaps in Delhi, yeah. And
Hmm.
my father met Willie with a case of cholera in Landauer in
Oh, really?
1949.
Willie
And
had come to
Willie
land on 49, is it?
was
Wow.
after Nanda Devi. After Nanda Devi, and he had bad cholera, diarrhea in Landauer.
Oh. Mhm. Oh,
Dad
wow.
brought him into the house to rehydrate him.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. All right. Imagine.
So,
And
but
that was Ad Carter in the 30s. And when I was at Dartmouth, I used to be picked up by Ad Carter and Brad Washburn. Ad Carter, Brad Washburn, David Brashears,
Bob
and
Bates,
one Bob Bates, and they all used to pick me up on a weekend and take me to Ad and Ann Carter's home at the base of Mount Washington in Jefferson,
Yeah,
New
yeah,
Hampshire. So we
lovely.
spent many, many weekends there.
Well,
All right.
Rupin, we are so looking forward to your coming here to our home in the headwaters of the Potomac. Your interview is tomorrow, I guess, for the
It
visa.
took place today,
I'm
so it does look like I'm coming. I've got the visa, but they say 1 week to get the passport back. So I've asked them to expedite that. That's the last glitch in a series of ongoing glitches. So if that works and I can get the passport on time, then I can buy the ticket and I can indeed be with you folks next week.
Well, we're looking forward to it, Rupin. Could I send another letter? The one I sent before, I sent to the consulate section in the State Department. I don't have a contact in Delhi.
Yeah, no, don't you worry. I think this is going to have work now. This should work out this time. I think so. So,
Okay,
yep.
good.
Okay.
Well, we are at time. Leo, I want to formally thank you for your application and your interest, and thank you and Debbie as well for your trip down. It's with great pleasure that we welcome you to the headwaters of the Potomac Wheel. And you've already met Fran and me last night over dinner. And Leo, I'm going to let Rupin, who's a member of the board based in Delhi, introduce himself, and then Chris Cluett, who's a trustee emeritus. I'm hoping that we will get other trustees to come in soon, Leo, but it's great to have you. And thank you, Deborah, for helping set Leo up there in the North Mountain office. So, Rupin, can you introduce yourself briefly? This meeting is not a long one, so we want
All
to
right.
get on with the questions so Rupin, over to you, and then Chris, and then Stephanie is board secretary, and so Stephanie, you might want to make a few introductions as well. And then Leo, I have two questions to start off for you, and then other trustees will come in.
Sounds good.
Rupin.
Sorry. Yeah. So, hi, Leo. Sorry. Morning, Leo.
Morning.
It's evening time here. So this is Ruben Dang, and I'm sitting in Delhi. I divide my time between the Himalaya and IFG, the lines of agroforestry, community development, Himalayan fluvial, sylvan conservation, wildlife conservation. We also create a lot of educational content for a wide audience in South Asia. People, places. We archive the South Asian subcontinent for a global audience, and we archive a whole range of things such as agriculture, people, places, the new India, the challenges of a new India, water resource challenges, air challenges, all kinds of lifestyle challenges of urbanization in a challenging, complex country like India. And we share that with a global audience because those learnings and experiences from India have parallels in other countries of Southeast Asia, from parts of the historical past in Europe and Africa. We all face the same human challenges, and we're all going through those very difficult curves of wanting fantastic rapid GDP numbers and growth, and water and air and basic human rights even and resources are all being thrown by the wayside. So these are all the challenges that we take head on in a very delicate documentary fashion without taking political sides. So that's where we are at, and we have a lot of these learnings and challenges to share and discuss with future generations. If I'm to be there next week, hopefully, and in the future when we get to see you as well. So lots of fun, interesting, challenging work up ahead for all of us as individuals and as a collective organization.
Thank you.
And Chris, you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, Leo. I sort of began my connections with Future Generations, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. Daniel and I share in common some roots in the country of Nepal. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Nepal in the 60s, and then I went on to spend 3 more years working with the USAID Rural Development Program there. I came back to the US, got my degree in sociology, and had a career working as a research social scientist with the Battelle Memorial Institute for 35 years or so. So I've been on the board of Future Generations. I've traveled to various parts of the world with Future Generations, and as Daniel said, I'm currently an emeritus trustee because I retain my longstanding interest and commitment to the organization and the work that it's doing. So I'm out here in Seattle, Washington. Maybe you can see in my background a picture of Mount Rainier. And so it's good to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you, Chris. Thanks.
And Leo, as introducing yourself, and here I want to especially start your dissertation topic was rethinking the creative economy, and we have it's a pun in some ways for the challenge for the university. We have to rethink our economy. Because there's a huge opportunity for future generations, and the key barrier holding it back, in my judgment, and I think the board would agree, has been figuring out how to make it a creative economy so that it addresses the purpose of mission. And we're very honored and pleased that you've expressed interest. So I would like if you could just start off by highlighting what it is about your background and interests and academic skill sets. And as Associate Dean of the University of Massachusetts, you come with a very strong academic record. So we're eager to hear your introduction of yourself.
Sure. So I'll go backwards a little bit to my work at the community college, where I was Dean of Humanities, Engineering, Math, and Science. And at a community college, one of the things that was really dear to the institution was our connection and responsibility for our local community. In Massachusetts, each of the counties has its own community college. And so you're sort of beholden to helping people within the community. And Franklin County is one of the poorest counties in Massachusetts and home of a lot of post-industrial cities. Who are with populations who are struggling with a lot of the challenges of poverty, addiction, those kinds of things. We had a state representative who identified different economic sectors that they felt had potential for growth and development, one of which was healthcare, one was transportation, and the one I was given was the creative economy. And so we worked to develop a plan to strengthen the creative economy. We worked with a lot of the local nonprofits and the key players in the area. And we ended up pulling in a federal earmark that put a fairly substantial sum of money into the creative economy. And while I was managing this project, I started to worry that I wasn't seeing that money that was coming from the federal earmark actually make it to the artists and artisans and make an impact. There was something wrong that was happening that wasn't achieving the things we wanted to achieve with all our efforts. And I wasn't quite clear on what we needed to think differently. It was around this time that I was introduced to Julie Graham, who's part of a writing duo called J.K. Gibson Graham. And they are proponents of something called community economies. And it's this idea that the purpose of an economy is to improve the quality of life for people. And that's something that I definitely see resonating in seed scale and in the work of future generations. That we're not working to increase assets and increase Wall Street. We're working really to increase the quality of life of people. And if you lose scope of that, then the economy is not functioning correctly. So using what I learned from Julie Graham, I had to rethink about how we went about doing community development. And I learned a process called participatory action research. And in this work, we pulled together a group of artists and artisans and taught them how to be co-researchers in our project. We taught them how to do qualitative interviews. We equipped them with digital recorders, and they collected data by interviewing their peers. And then they helped us analyze that data through the transcripts and come up with action steps moving forward. And it was really transformative for me as a researcher, but transformative for each of the people who were involved as well, because they were coming from an asset-based perspective, where their work was seen as something of value, and their contributions to the community were seen as something of value, and that they had assets to give, even if it wasn't encompassed in the traditional monetary capitalist sense of assets. And so that really sent me down a path of thinking about development in different ways that really centered around the individuals that you want to impact. I belong to the Community Economies Institute, which is an international organization that's of like-minded people who are really thinking along that way. How do you think about community development in ways that impact people, the people of that community? And how do you center research and knowledge production centering around the people who hold that knowledge as the owners of that knowledge, rather than the academic coming in and saying, I know how to fix things. So in that regard, I feel like the future generations and sort of ethos is really aligned with where I'm coming from. I've continued to use participatory action research, particularly around diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And so at the community college, for example, training students how to be researchers for their peers, and identifying at the college, where are we doing things well and where are we not doing things well, and how do we build from that? As I'm sure you all are all familiar with, I center my work around the asset-based community development idea, the ABCD, and this idea that once you identify assets, they're much easier to build from. They give you something that you can work with. If you start with deficits, then you have to find extra funding, you have to find more people, you have to find more time, and it's much harder to address the deficits. You can't forget them. You always have to remember that they're there, and that you have to address them at some point. But if you start with your assets, it gives you a sense of agency. And I found that with the artists that we worked with, I find that with faculty when I work with faculty, and I find that with students when we talk about social change.
Well, there's a huge overlap. And so, Rupin, do you have any initial questions of Leo here? Rupin, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just saying the breadth and depth of his research work and papers and things. It's just completely mind-boggling how he's done that in so few years. Way back in time, I used to be called the Grantmaster at Dartmouth. I think he's really the Grandmaster in terms of all those grants he seems to have picked up, which we need to get for. We need to use his grant making skills for FG now for the university. And yeah, he's got a lot of geography under his belt. So I mean, I think he just comes with so much collective academic presence from multiple campuses that I think he has a lot of background from a lot of East Coast fine colleges and universities. And He seems to have a lot of research work done. So, yep, a combination of skills which can be appropriately challenging and suitable for our milieu.
Thank you, Rupen. Chris, your thoughts?
So before you move on, I
Yeah.
would caution you, Rupen, that a lot of what I do is collaboratively based. And so where I flourish and where I've found success, it's because I've worked with groups of really fantastic and intelligent and creative people. And so
You'll find likewise here, I think. So long as you take the leadership role, you'll find likewise here.
Well, that's in our seed scale work, we have partnerships and collaboration, Leo, as you know, right up with the assets, which is our building from successes, and we've learned immensely from ABCD and its legacy. Chris, do you have thoughts or questions, comments?
Well, I'm curious, Leo, how you came to know about Future Generations in the first place, and the reason being that I think at least within Future Generations we have a sense that we're relatively small on the international scene. We're not widely recognized, or at least we assume that we're not widely recognized. And it seems to me that finding ways to increase our visibility could be beneficial in a couple of ways. One, it could enhance the potential and opportunity for us to successfully fundraise. And second, it enhances the potential influence that Future Generations and its community-based approach can have on the sustainable development community and the strategies that are employed therein around the world. And I'm curious if you agree that Future Generations should make more of an effort to enhance our wider recognition and visibility, and if you do, how would you go about doing that?
So I definitely think that there's so much potential with expanding Future Generations' impact and visibility. I actually learned about the university through Daniel's reaching out to me, and it was really a beautiful thing to discover, because everything I read about and the books that Daniel sent forward and all resonate as like, yes, we're talking the same language, we're talking about the same kinds of things in our day-to-day work. I want more of Future Generations in our approach to thinking about development and thinking about how do we educate students going out into this world. The one thing that jumps into my mind that I talked to Daniel a little bit about is the Community Economies Institute that I belong to. It's really an international collaboration of faculty and academics around the world, a lot in Australia and New Zealand, but also extending into Europe, Asia, South America, and the United States. And all of these academics are sharing information, sharing articles, sharing their research that then gets turned into what they do in the classroom. And so if you can introduce to undergrads some of the projects that we have, the case studies that you're working on and that your students are working on, the success stories, the impact that this university has made on change in terms of like the different movements of sustainability and environmental awareness in different regions of the world. I think you can, there's the slow impact of people learning about and reading about the work of this university that then turns into people who want to come and become a part of this institution. I think there's also aspects of collaborating with the academics and researchers who are having like-minded projects and endeavors. And so I like expanding my wheelhouse of who do I know that's in doing this kind of work. And I think there's all kinds of collaborations in that way. In addition, there are also other organizations that have similar missions, but are not necessarily directly aligned, but could benefit from collaboration. And so one example is I'm on the board of this organization called the International Training and Development Corporation. They bring in State Department grants focused on helping educate different populations. So for example, bringing in a cohort of students from Pakistan who are learning about the United States judicial system or administration for higher education or various different things. They're a very small organization in Amherst, Massachusetts, but they're bringing in multi-year State Department grants. But they're challenged because they're kind of at the limits of their capacity. They can only deliver so much, and they have limited facilities, and they have limited resources in terms of staff. Collaborating with an organization like that, when we have aligning missions and our goals fit together, would be a real benefit to both organizations. So finding those kinds of opportunities for collaboration, I think, is another way to get our name out there, to get people to know who we are, and to get us playing on a larger stage.
Fran, it's good to hear Leo's specific suggestions of potential partners, which we look forward to. But Fran, do you have any follow-up questions, please? And then Stephanie.
One of the things that I'm always interested in is the money. And a very important part of being president of this institution is helping to raise money. And so as you look at this, how would you go about initially, other than, looking at what we've already got, we need to expand? How would you go about that?
First would be talking with you, Fran. I know fundraising is your specialty, and so I think the key thing that I would hope any president that comes into your organization does is to learn from the people who are there. Your leadership team, who I just met with earlier this morning, the board, and in particular you, Fran, and strengths that you have. I think this is a really interesting organization in that you're both very strongly place-based in West Virginia and have this identity here within the state. And so you have specific needs to connect with the local legislators and the local community and make sure that they value what Future Generations provides for the region. But then you also have this international presence, which is really expands your scope tremendously, and the student body. So I think the challenge for a president coming into this institution is to balance both of those things, where you're looking at an international scale and looking at donors from hopefully in an international stage, while also working to make sure that your place in the local region is clear and cemented and enables you to participate in the conversation on the local level at the state and the county. I was just talking with Luke about the importance of the community engagement and the state, and making sure that the state understands future generations as serving people in Appalachia. And then moving beyond that to being a center of research for syrup production and across the region and the country. And that's pretty incredible that a small university like this can become a center for something like that. So making sure that people recognize what you're doing here and the impact that it makes both locally and abroad, and seeking out those donors who can address both those stages. I will admit that what I would need to work on as a president, if I was in this kind of role, is figuring out, how do I get the professional development I need to be more effective at those levels? Because I'm not as familiar as Daniel is to working with the large NGOs and how to have those kinds of conversations. And Fran has a skill set that I would need to learn from. And that's definitely something that's important for whoever steps into this role and crucial. So I would share that.
Fran, do you want to ask a follow-up question before we turn to Stephanie?
Now let's turn to Stephanie.
Stephanie, you have seen several people serve in this president's position, and you've read all the files. And so you've got a real perspective. And Leo, as background, Stephanie was the Assistant Commissioner for Tax and Revenue for the state of West Virginia. And she turned around the revenue side of the state's tax basis. So she's always coming in with a very skilled and experienced view. Stephanie, with that introduction, how would you phrase the question?
Okay, Daniel gives thank you. You give me way too much credit as always. I appreciate it. So Leah and I got met earlier in the cabinet meeting, and of course, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about finances, et cetera, and we have a meeting today at 11:30 to go more into that. But I guess it may not be really fair to you, Leo, yet, because you haven't really had a chance to look around the county, but another aspect that we've found with candidates or people moving into the area is integrating into the community here, and a bit of a culture shock coming from other areas into a small county like we are, a rural county. Do you have experience living or working in small rural counties, or how would you overcome something like that, I guess?
That's a good question. I mean, I did look at the demographics of Franklin and realize that I will increase the Asian population by 100% if I live in the county.
Yes.
And it's so I went to college at a small college town in rural Tennessee, University of South in Swanee, Tennessee. It's definitely a little larger than Franklin, but not foreign to me in terms of the local communities and towns in the area. We did get to go eat at the Cozy Corner Cafe this morning and hear a little bit of the local folks talking about politics and what they're worried about. I think the reality is it is a bit of a change from where we are, where we think of where we live in Western Massachusetts as rural. But I think it's a different kind of rural out here. And I think that's a good question, Stephanie. And I think it's something we'll have to really think hard about, is does that work for us? And I wouldn't want to come to an institution uncertain about whether that would work and not be able to make the kind of commitment that I think you need from your president. My wife's currently traveling around and looking at some of the region, and she's going to be my eyes and ears for today. And And we've set aside tomorrow also to do some exploring and really seeing, like, can we imagine ourselves in this place? So I think it's not out of the wheelhouse, but it's definitely a different change for us.
I appreciate your thoughtful answer. There is, hopefully during your investigation, you'll spend some time in Harrisonburg, which really isn't that far from here, and has other opportunities to explore. A lot of our people drive there daily, so to us it's not far.
Okay, I'll make a purpose. We'll make sure we purposely go there tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Ruben, do you have any follow-up questions and points here to push?
I was just amused at how he's going to respond to move from the Amherst side to West Virginia, because it's it's glorious countryside in terms of what I think of it. But in Dartmouth, we used to apologetically quote Daniel Webster, who said, "It is, sir, as I've said, a small college, and yet there are those who love it." So I was that almost has a parallel to the current to the current scenario where he was going to be moving to really small town America, which is, like I said, glorious, and you're part of the woods, which I look forward to exploring. So yes, let us know what you think of this wonderful neck of the woods.
And Chris is familiar with Amherst pretty well. He went to college just down the road in Williamstown.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm familiar with Swanee, and if he survived Swanee, Tennessee, I can tell you that Pendleton County is a much nicer place. The people are much nicer.
Nice to hear.
And you've already found the corner shop. It's definitely a place to get to know the different characters of the county.
Mhm.
Yeah. Even
And
if
they'll tell
Peanut's
you
not
what
there.
they think.
Leo, we have 7 minutes before we have to move on to the next meeting for Leo. But Leo, are there any particular aspects about the university that you've talked a little bit about the understanding of the need to grow and the need for partnerships, which I think everybody strongly affirms. Are there any particular academic or scholarly or aspects that you would like to grow? You mentioned participatory action research. This is very high priority for the university. It was why in the earlier discussions you and I had, I was particularly interested, because this is the feature of research that we're most interested in. And so your perspective. So would you like to expound some more on where you see scholarly and research? Because in research, if you go back to our strategic plan of 2020, 2009, which was a 5-year plan, we saw actually that as an income stream. It pays for faculty, it pays for overhead. So develop some more of the whole idea of applied research, please.
So one of the keys that I see to applied research is collaboration, and trying to figure out where are those key connections that you need to create for that research to flourish in action and change. And you write about that beautifully in the books about like where you're finding those connections, and I definitely see there being generational connections that need to happen in any community where you're doing work. And so part of that comes from people who, it might be the people who own storefronts or manage the banks, the funding, or are the politicians, the people who are seeking opportunity, which are oftentimes people who are immigrant communities or people who are marginalized within the community and need access to those kinds of things. And the researcher has an opportunity to be the conduit to make those connections, so that the authentic kinds of community development that the university has been engaged in and that I truly believe in are things that are sustainable and that the researcher lets go of after a period of time, that it's not something that's controlled by a research agenda, but is controlled by what a community needs to flourish. So if I was, you're asking me what are the things that I can expand on with that? And it's really figuring out, how do we make sure that people know about us as an agency for that kind of change? I'll give you an example of the Conway School of Architecture and Design up in Massachusetts, and they're very similar to model to the Future Generations, and they do community design projects that are focused around how do you create spaces that are more people oriented. And their students do work on a commission base for local towns, local community colleges, those kinds of things, where it's really a social agency service that they're doing. They're providing, how do we make this environment more conducive to pedestrians, or more conducive to the families that we want to make use of this space, or how do we make students be able to utilize the property in a way that's more centered around learning. And because the communities see the value that they're adding to their environment, they're willing to put forward the money needed to make those plans come to fruition. And that's in part how that organization maintains its funding, and it's in part how it's able to fund its students to participate in this kind of work, which is different than your typical architecture school or design school. This is more community focused, more people focused, and more environmentally focused. And so to me, that if we can help people recognize the impact of what Future Generation does for the planet, for the people on this planet, for the communities that we value most, I believe we can find people who are willing to put forward the support and funding that's needed to make this university really flourish at scale that's reasonable for this university. And it's interesting talking with different people and thinking small and thinking about the benefits of thinking small. Arundhati Roy has an essay about thinking small and inverting scale, and thinking about the impact of one family, one person, rather than a mega dam. And I think that's something that we need to emphasize, while also thinking about how scale allows that one family, that one person, to start impacting a whole community and hopefully a whole region.
To my colleagues on the board, the idea of working with commissions, as Leo has outlined, in my decades of experience, is, Leo, you've articulated as a viable business strategy that I had not heard in decades of looking for such. So we've been around that one in several ways, but you've articulated it in a potential and given with the Conway School an example. I just want everybody to pay attention to the wise counsel that we've received from you. So I thank you. Chris or Rupin or Fran or Stephanie, a follow-up question to Leo. We are at time, but I want to give another opportunity. Well, it's not the end of the interview because it's going to last all day, Leo. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to meet the trustees. And I'm sorry that James Patterson, who's in getting some medical attention in Charleston, could not join the meeting today. And I just got a message from Cheeto in Zimbabwe that that her internet was totally down, even for her mobile phone. She has a farm outside of Mutare, and So Nick Bott obviously didn't join, but I do want to thank you, Leo, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and I do want to send my appreciation to all the trustees because this session has been recorded and it will be shared with everyone else and on the board. And additionally, we will be getting back to you rather promptly, I assume, with the decisions by the board. And so as we wrap up, I also want to express deep gratitude to Fran for her service as the transitional president and having returned with great pleasure for all of us after having been away for 20 years. So, Leo, thank you very much. And I will look forward to being with you. And you're already up in North Mountain. So, Rupin, we hope you can make it here in 10 days to the Global Engagement Initiative.
Absolutely, Daniel. Thank you.
And Chris, thank you for joining us from Seattle. It's early in the morning there, and you weren't having too much Seattle coffee this morning.
My usual little mug.
Well,
It was wonderful to meet you.
And we'll see
Thank
you
you.
later. Thank you so much, Lido.
Yeah. Thank you, Leo. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Rupin, you still there? I'm turning off the recording in case you can't. Well, I can't turn it off. It's not. I don't have co-host, but Rupin, thank you very much, and we will be in touch. And let me know if there's anything I can do for you to support your travel. We are most eager to have you here. Bye-bye.